Welcome back, it's Matt. And recently there's been a ton of chatter about the Apple Card and Goldman Sachs selling off their consumer division potentially to American Express. I think that's a bad idea, and I've got 5 reasons why, so we're going to get into it. But yeah, I don't see this happening for a number of reasons. So let's jump into it. Number 1, it doesn't look like it's a fit for Amex. So what I mean by that is Amex currently has a rule of getting 4 or 5, maybe 6 cards, right? Is adding an Apple Card, if you've already got 4 other American Express cards, going to be helpful to you if you're someone who can get 4? Is American Express going to make the Apple Card exempt so that you can have however many Amex cards you already have plus the Apple Card? I just don't see how that would happen. So it's a square peg in a round hole for American Express. I'm not sure where this card fits into their stack, because with their co-branded cards, you get Hilton points. With Delta, you get Sky Miles. But for Apple, they usually do straight cash back. And it's not statement credits, cash back like American Express. And yes, you can deposit into American Express high yield savings accounts and business savings account and business accounts. But usually Amex does their cash back in the form of statement credit. So it doesn't fit there. And it doesn't fit in terms of their reward structures. Now, are they going to turn the Apple Card into an MR, into a membership rewards points earning card? I don't see that. Would they break it down by seller like Apple does, where you get 3x MR points for purchasing at Apple? No, Apple needs to be at the top with their card. So is it going to be 5x MR points? Does Apple agree to doing MR points? Apple would prefer to do cash back. Is Apple going to push for higher cash back at Apple, or higher cash back for using the mobile wallet? So it's a lot of questions to figure out where they're going to fit that card into their stack. They would need to do significant changes. Now, I don't know if those changes would be positive or negative. If it's membership rewards points earning, people would love that. MX enthusiasts would love that. But if it's a straight cash back card, those in the travel community may not see it as worthwhile. So first and foremost, I don't see it as the fit that people think it is with Amex. Number 2, what does it get Apple? Apple currently has their card that produces cashback for them, lets them turn the card into effectively 0% loans on people purchasing their products, which is the biggest thing they want you to do with the card. They want you to buy their products, and they will give you a 0% loan to do it. They don't do late fees. They don't do foreign transaction fees. There's another fee that they don't do. Well, they say annual fee, but we already know that. So it's a question of, what does American Express bring to the table for Apple if Apple will agree to let their card be sold? Because I think that if Goldman Sachs goes forward with it, Apple will just sue to get an injunction and get a breach of contract relief, especially since Goldman just extended their partnership with Apple to the end of the decade. And now to suddenly turn around, Apple has strong lawyers. I don't think you're going to get away with that with any sort of ease. So what does a relationship with American Express get Apple? Yes, it gets high income folks, but it's folks who are also more excited about travel than they are cashback. Now, don't get me wrong. Blue Cash Everyday is a strong card. Blue Cash Preferred is a strong card. But when you think of American Express, you think of the Gold Card, you think of the Platinum Card. If you live in a city, you tend to think of the Green Card. Nobody really brings up any of the lesser known cards like the Everyday Preferred, the Everyday Card, or the Cash Magnet, because unless it's one of those higher end charge cards, you don't hear a lot about those cards. You'll also hear about Delta and their Hilton cards and their Marriott cards, but you have to be in the points and miles game really before you're talking about those co-branded cards. So what does a relationship with American Express get Apple? That I don't know. Apple likes to have partnerships that give them the maximum amount of leverage and the maximum amount of return for Apple. So going to American Express, I don't see how that's going to work out unless Apple significantly changes their tune on this. And I don't see them doing that, especially since they were getting an interchange fee from Goldman Sachs. So Goldman Sachs would get their interchange fee and MasterCard would get an interchange fee, but Apple is also making money on the Apple Card every single transaction. Apple's not going to give that up. And I think Amex would not want to split that with Apple. So the value prop for Amex for Apple has to be there for Apple to agree to have their things sold over to Amex. Because, again, I'm pretty sure they'd just file an injunction to prevent the sale if they're not happy. Number 3, Apple doesn't handle betrayal or any perceived slight particularly well. Look at the history of Apple. Anytime a partner has crossed Apple, Apple will burn everything to the ground in association with that company. I don't think Apple's particularly happy with Goldman Sachs right now. And I think Apple will look for a way to end this partnership as soon as they can and as soon as it's feasible. And I don't think they're going to want to go to another banking partner because Apple walks to the beat of their own drum. And if no one else is going to give Apple the deal that they want, the deal that Goldman gave them, they're not going to jump in with anyone else. That's why the initial Apple Card didn't go to Chase, didn't go to Wells Fargo, didn't go to Capital One, didn't go to American Express, even though Capital One and American Express, Capital One being the subprime king and American Express being the high-end luxury king. Why didn't this happen the first time? Apple's demands. If you look at the history of Apple, Nvidia crossed Apple once. Nvidia and Apple were tight partners for a long time. Apple dropped them like a sack of potatoes. You look at Qualcomm and the Qualcomm Apple mess. And, Apple went out of their way to get modems for the iPhones made through Intel. And when the Intel modems were bad, they had to go back to Qualcomm. But you know what they ended up doing? Buying the modem business from Intel and bringing it in-house. Apple, again, uses partners until they don't need them. And Apple, I'm sure, is working on accelerating a way to not need Goldman Sachs. And if they don't need Goldman Sachs, they're not going to need any other banking partner. More on that in a bit. Number 4, American Express is unlikely to take on some portion of current Apple Card holders. Apple extended Apple Cards to a lot of different customers, and they insisted that Goldman take on those customers who will say are risky at the very least. So they were taking on a bunch of subprime folks and folks who are going to need to be written off. Now, American Express has done the same. They will accept folks for cards and end up charging folks off, and they've got a history of doing that. But does American Express want to buy out this portfolio and bring in all of those risky bets and have them have to write them off as well? I don't know that American Express wants to do that. And if they're not willing to do that, I'm sure that Apple will still insist that their customers be catered to. So again, it's another square peg, round hole. I don't see how they're going to come to some sort of reconciliation on that one. I could be wrong. The Apple Card is a trendy card. So, Amex, I'm sure, will do a certain amount to get the card if they absolutely want it. I don't know if it's worth the fight to them, because they'll either have to change the earning structure, they'll have to try to convince Apple to go from selected partners to selected categories, which if Apple wanted to change the categories, the Apple Card's been out since 2019. They would have done so by now. I don't see it happening. It could, but you're asking a lot of a company that, again, marches to the beat of their own drum. And if Apple's not going to budge, is it really worth Amex taking on that risk? I don't know. Which brings us to number 5. Number 5. Apple could just buy a bank and buy out Goldman's customer business. So Apple has the market cap. Apple has a fair amount of cash on hand. Not the sort of cash on hand that they had at the beginning of the pandemic, but Apple could very easily buy a bank and buy Marcus and the Goldman consumer banking portion of their business and just operate the bank and distribute the credit card and run their high yield savings account that way. They could bypass a checking account, not worry about car loans, not worry about personal loans, not worry about mortgages or any sort of other financial product other than a high yield savings that you can dump your cash back into, and a card that will produce cash back on Apple's terms. Apple's more likely to become a bank because of Goldman needing to get out of this deal than Apple is partnering with American Express, with Capital One, with Chase, with Wells Fargo, with US Bank, with any bank that would want the Apple business. Because unless they're going to cater to what Apple wants when Apple wants it. Apple's more likely to just buy a bank. Doesn't have to be a big bank, just has to be a bank that is FDIC insured, and their ability to carry that FDIC insurance and guarantee that FDIC insurance, and buy out Goldman's portfolio of Marcus and their customer-facing banking products. So Marcus, they'll probably bring in the Marcus loans as well, because those will make them some money as well. But they'll keep the underwriting staff for the Apple Card and continue to do things the way they're doing. They don't see the need to change the earning structure. They're not going to. The primary reason this card exists is to extend 0% loans to people to buy MacBooks, iPhones, Apple Watches, anything and everything in the Apple Store. They want to make it easier for folks to do without having to use a firm, without having to use any other short-term loan company. I don't see Apple willingly accepting a deal that they're not the principal on. And this is a principal Goldman deal and American Express deal. Apple will go kicking and screaming into the night to make sure that they get what they want at the end of the day. Is it the best for their customers? I don't know. Is it the best for the credit card community as a whole? I don't know. But Apple, the technology company, receives slights very harshly, and they perceive betrayal very harshly. I think, again, more likely, Apple will take the steps necessary to become a bank, because they've already been taking those steps, working with Goldman along the way. They'll just go it alone once they have enough expertise. And I'm sure they can hire enough expertise if they bought a bank and bought out the Goldman customer division. So those are 5 reasons I don't think the Apple Card goes to Amex. You're not going to see it change into an MR card, a membership rewards points card. I don't think. If it does, Apple's going to extract some sort of payment for it. I don't think you're going to see it become anything more than what it already is. And the way that they're going to keep it the way that it already is just become a bank. Apple customers will sign up for the card, and there's plenty of Apple customers that they don't have to worry about the negative effects of spurning Amex or telling Goldman Sachs to sit and spin. There's no way Apple's going to lose out on any of this, because they get their cut when the Apple Card is used. We'll see what ends up happening. We'll keep following this. If I were a betting man, I would bet against Amex getting the Apple Card. I just don't see it. But that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Hey, Editor Matt here. Had to jump in real quick, and I'm tacking this on at the end. There's one big reason why Apple may be amenable to a relationship with Amex if it leaves Goldman Sachs, or Goldman Sachs sells everything over to Amex. Amex is a closed loop ecosystem in terms of Amex is the bank, Amex is the payment processor, Amex handles the rewards, Amex does everything all within the same chain, basically. Whereas most other bank cards are open loop systems where things go through Visa or MasterCard, or if they partner with Discover, you have that different payment processor relationship. Apple, again, uses partners for as long as they can until they figure out how they're going to do things, and then they go ahead and break away from the partnership once they're going to handle things on their own. If Apple wants to become a closed loop ecosystem in terms of being a bank and payment processor, working with Amex for a few years to get the gist of things is just the thing that they would do, and a way to be okay with no longer being under Goldman or in their partnership with Goldman. Not that they need their partnership with Goldman, but that might be the only thing that might get them to say, hey, yeah, we'll go along with this. But just a thought, and thanks so much for sticking around. Share, subscribe, and talk to you soon.